Hello, everyone. My name is John Horrigan, and welcome to More to the Picture Than Meets the Eye, Behind the Lens with legendary photographer Steve Babineau. If you know Babs, he's been photographing professional sports, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, college sports, rock and roll, and he's also into Westerns. And in this episode, we're going to talk about TV Westerns, that is the Alaskans and the Dakotas, and then we're going to talk about maybe spaghetti Westerns and the Singing Cowboys as well. Babs, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great, bud. How are you?
Good, thank you. So, Babs, we've been just dedicating some time to the Warner Brothers TV series, beginning with Cheyenne. Last episode, we did Bronco, Colt 45. We talked about James Garner and Maverick. But this is the Alaskans, Rocky Shaw, Dorothy Provine. It's a show that did not have a long run. It ran in 1959 through 1960, again on ABC. But talk about this particular program and what makes it so unique. And it's, again, in the tree of Cheyenne.
Yeah, well, here they were, they're trying to film some type of a how do I want to say it, cold environment show being called the Alaskans. Okay.
Right, which was about the Yukon gold strike in the 1890s.
California. So, I'm sure that the set production, setup, layout, whatever is had to be a task for the show. But, it ran 59 to 60 and 37 episodes. And like you said, you had Roger Moore, who goes on to have stardom as 007, but originally he gets his start with Warner Brothers Studios. And when this show ended, he immediately, probably because he had a contract, and he immediately went into the role on Maverick as Cousin Bo, and did 15 episodes there, and then eventually I think left the studio to get into films. But Dorothy Provine, again, female actress that was a regular on the show, singer, dance hall girl, whatever, and hooked up with Silky Harris here, and Roger Moore's buddy was Rocky Shaw. Rocky Shaw was Dorothy Provine, and York was Reno McGee in the show. And like I said, I haven't had the opportunity to see many of these episodes because there's only 5 that exist out there. So, to really get a good grip on, what this series was, in detail about, I don't know, and I don't think too many people know. I mean, other than what's probably written by.
Right. And Roger Moore would prefer it that way because he called this my most appalling television series ever. And again, he referenced what you said about doing Alaskan scenes on very, very hot days, trying to imitate the Klondike. And then what happened, he was married to Dorothy Squires and he fell in love with Dorothy Provine.
Yeah, supposedly, yeah. I mean, you imagine being out, like you look at this picture of Dorothy Provine and the coat she's wearing in that picture, and it's probably 85 degrees or 87 degrees, 90 degrees out, and they're filming. So, it was a spinoff, another Warner Brothers spinoff into something a little different, and but it was in that genre of the other shows that Warner Brothers was doing on TV, Lawman, Colt 45, Sugarfoot, Cheyenne, Maverick was on, you know what I mean? So it's, I guess, if you're back in the day, what do you really want to watch? You're going to watch Maverick tonight, or you're going to watch this tonight, and how does the Alaskans fit in there? You know what I mean? And what was on opposite the Alaskans on another channel might have been the dominating show that didn't get this show, promoted to the point where it could last more than a year.
And the guest stars on that were Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who went on to star in the FBI. Dick Sargent, one of Bewitch's first wife, I guess. No, the second husband, rather, of Samantha in Bewitched. And then also Claude Akins appeared in this series.
Well, when you read, you see that it was 59 to 60. So that's telling you it's 1 year. But there were 37 episodes of this made.
That's incredible.
37 episodes, and only 5 technically have survived. So when you think about, 37 episodes, it's a lot of episodes for one show. And then now not to have made it into the DVD, mix of, I'm sure if that show came out on DVD right now, it would do very, very well, I think. I mean, just the fact that we know it's rare,
Sure. And then that moves us to the Dakotas, which had a longer run on ABC. It was we could call this the final Warner Brothers TV series for Westerns for all intent and purpose, or from that genre or from that era, right?
Yeah, this was the 1963. This is 1963 when all these other shows were 1960, ending like in 1962. But, this show only lasted 20 episodes. And, it was about 4 marshals, four sheriffs, seeking out outlaws in the West. And unfortunately, from what I remember reading, in the 18th episode, there was a scene inside a church, and basically,
and Babs, it was called Sanctuary at Crystal Springs. But go on, talk about the scene inside
Crystal Springs, the 18th episode, and it was a gunfight, and it was inside the church, and 2 outlaws got shot in the church, and the outrage of the public in showing that visual on television, I guess, was unheard of back in the day. And basically, they filmed, from what I read, they filmed 2 more shows, and only 1 more got put on television. And the 20th episode has never been seen.
Really?
It never made it onto the air, from what I'm told. But so it must have been. I don't remember it. I don't remember the show because I'm a little bit older then, so I'm probably out and about and doing things. And but I did see it in some reruns and syndication, and then I was able to get a hold of some copies of the show. But from what I gather, I think it's out there on DVD, but I don't know if that 20th episode is out there.
It is released as a complete series, as you said, but right, I'm wondering if that.
I'm pretty sure it is. But Chad Everett was in there, good-looking young guy, and the main guy was the gentleman in the middle there. Frank Reagan. Larry Ward was the main guy, and the evil guy, that played in tons of Westerns, Jack Elam, usually as a bad guy, well known for that. And, so he was on the good side of the law in this program. So, I'm sure, it had its moments, and, but basically it only lasted 20 episodes. And then that basically was the end of the Warner Brothers Cowboys scenario, because the other shows, basically, Cheyenne ran to 62, Maverick ran to 62, Bronco ran to 62, Lawman ran to 62. So, they tried to do another show. There was another show out there called Temple Houston, which ran from 63 to 64, but that only lasted 1 season also.
Really? Temple Houston?
Temple Houston. And so, 63 was basically the end of the popularity of the Warner Brothers shows.
And I think maybe because they couldn't get sponsorship, and maybe the last straw, the Dakotas, I know that was poison to some of their sponsors, especially being heavily Christian and religious in the nation during that time. But
I think if you look at the time frame, I think that's when kind of sci-fi took over. Sci-fi kind of probably came in right around that end of that with Star Trek, and the other shows that might have been out there, and Star Trek was huge, big time huge, so
But there are other shows that lasted for many, many years. My favorite, I've told you before, is Death Valley Days, where they take actual stories and reenact them.
Yeah.
And that ran over, of course, I believe, of 3 decades.
Right. I mean, it was that was with a lot of main actors too. You know, Ronald Reagan was in that. You know, Ronald Reagan was in that, and
Clint Eastwood.
yeah, a lot of actors that ended up becoming big stars. So I mean, you know, I remember seeing my dad watch Death Valley Days every once in a while because I remember the music. And but again, I now was a little bit older and other interests started to
Sure.
Little League baseball and Babe Ruth baseball. And
Sure.
I wasn't staying home. I was hanging at the parks and stuff like that those days
Yeah.
too. So now it's now I'll watch them. So.
Yeah. Oh, you have the time. What about some other TV westerns outside of Warner Brothers? One that comes to mind is Gunsmoke, Bonanza.
Yeah, Wired Up with Hugh O'Brien. I actually met Hugh O'Brien at a show. Famous gun with the long nozzle on it. Bonanza, obviously, the four main characters there: Lorne Green,
Dan Blocker, Michael Landon,
and Pernell Roberts, who was the other guy. That was like a regular. You saw that every week, same time slot, and the famous Ponderosa map. And that was a classic, and it lasted for a long, long time. Another one that was very popular, and the person just passed away, was James Drury in the Virginian. The Virginian, and I had met James also at a show. So the Rifleman, Chuck Connors, ex Major League Baseball player, as well
and
as
Boston Celtic. Yep.
Celtics. Never met him, but I did meet Johnny Crawford. I met Johnny Crawford at a show and made a nice collage print, which he wanted, and I supplied him with some stuff. So, yeah, I mean, you can go. I remember F Troop. I remember the show F Troop. With Larry Storch, and it's kind of like hokey, but still, it was a western. But
about life in a fort.
We had Laramie. Laramie was very popular with Robert Fuller, John Smith, and that was a very popular show. And there's a lot of lesser Cimarron City, Cimarron Strip. I'm looking around the room here, and I'm Restless Gun with John Payne. But classic one, Have Gun Will Travel with Richard Boone. And then if you want to go back before, though, you obviously have the Lone Ranger.
On radio.
You have the radio show, and then you have Clayton Moore, and you have there was another guy by the name of Hart that played in the Lone Ranger, but Jay Silverheels, Rin Tin Tin, Rin Tin Tin with Lee Acker, and Disney's Zorro, Disney's Davy Crockett, on there, Annie Oakley, Kit Carson, even before that, Range Rider with Guy Madison. I'm looking around the room here, just
sure.
Hotel de Paris, which is really pretty an obscure TV show. Robert Culp, the I Spy guy, was originally in the TV show called Trackdown.
Okay.
And he was a Texas Ranger. And Johnny Ringo with Don Durant. But I think the longest running Western was Gunsmoke. And I may be wrong on that, but I think it was. I think it was the longest running, show. And, it had, the early days, it had, I'm thinking about here. Burt Reynolds was in it. And Dennis Weaver. And we had Festus, and
it ran Babs from 1952 to 1961.
Yeah. So, I think that, you have to look up Bonanza, but I think Gunsmoke's got it beat for longevity. But, Rory Calhoun and that show was very good. And trying to think, Have
Yep.
Gun, sure.
By the way, Bonanza went from 1959 through 1973, 431 episodes.
So that might have Gunsmoke beat. Is that a Gunsmoke beat?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So, Wagon Train. Wagon Train obviously lasted. Ward Bond passed away, and they brought in John McIntyre to be the master, the wagon master.
Can you go back on that? Wagon Train was a TV show, and the lead actor died in mid-series.
Well, yeah, Ward Bond was originally the wagon master of that show, and he played in a lot of movies with John Wayne, tons of movies with John Wayne, and he passed away. I don't know how long he had done the show, but he passed away, and then John McIntyre was brought in to be the new wagon master. And Robert Horton was in that originally, and then he did so many years, and then he left, and then they brought in Robert Fuller to be, in the show, and he did very well in it as well. So that was a classic show of wagon train living back in the day.
Sure. So some of my classic all-time Western films, probably my favorite's High Plains Drifter. I like The Searchers, but talk about spaghetti Westerns. What's that mean? When were they made, and what type of genre was that?
I'm a big fan of spaghetti Westerns because, I don't know, it just it just never really got me. It was like a shoot 'em up type, Western that I just didn't grasp. After seeing classic Western movies with Randolph Scott, Audie Murphy, even John Wayne, you know what I mean? There seemed to be a different storyline to those films than say the spaghetti Westerns, which was more about shoot 'em up.
Sure. They were created in the early 1960s, lower budget, filmed primarily produced by Italian directors, but filmed in Japan and the Pacific, the American Southwest. And there was Clint Eastwood, though. They call it the Dollars trilogy: A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, For a Few Dollars More, 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966. So out of all the spaghetti Westerns, he was the most successful.
Absolutely. And his movies just seem to be somewhat a little bit more different in a roundabout way than watching the other ones. And but he got his break at I remember him in a Maverick episode and on Warner Brothers. What are you doing, Mr. Maparak? I think it was his girlfriend had some attraction to James Garner in that episode, and he didn't like that idea. And I'm gonna get you, Mr. Maverick.
Mr. Maverick. But the spaghetti Westerns, though, Europe had a thirst for the Old West, whereas the Americans post World War II, even before the Second World War, there was an infatuation with all things West, like you said, bang, bang, shoot 'em up Westerns. And then I think what caused the spaghetti Westerns was a thirst for Western Europe, was interested in getting these movies done in Italian or Spanish languages that they could understand.
Right. And I remember, that's what I'm saying. I think I was watching those, and it's like, is this an overdub of a voice here? Because it doesn't seem like the same words are coming out of this guy's mouth here, So I think that's what really got me. That I thought I was watching something foreign, I guess. You know what I mean? And obviously, I was.
Right. And now I want to ask you about singing cowboys. Now, I've always liked the Roy Rogers, right? The way Roy and Dale Evans, Roy Rogers. Then there was Tex Ritter, whose son John Ritter went on to become a film star and TV star. And then Gene Autry, who I originally only knew as the owner of the California Angels. But talk a little bit about some of these singing cowboys.
His own backlot. you know, he had his own ranch that was all these films were filmed down.
Autry, right?
Yeah, and you know, he, you know, I'm just starting to collect his movies as well as some of these the Western stars like Tex Ritter and stuff like that, and Charles Starrett and Rex Allen. But I just acquired all of Roy Rogers' movies as well as the complete run of Roy Rogers TV shows.
Wow.
So, you know, again, that's a show that I definitely remember watching as a little kid, you know, and you know, so it had that twist to it about singing or whatever. So, but you know, that was it. I mean, he definitely dominated back in the day, as well as Autry with his films. But it wasn't. They weren't violent. They weren't. You know, they weren't really. You know, there might have been a bad guy or this or that, but you know, it wasn't maybe dressed like, you know, in a real movie scene. But
right, they'd shoot the guy's hand.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, it was. You know, it was just. And Roy Rogers had that guy that was the sidekick there that drove around in the Jeep, that Lily the Bell Jeep, and you know, and he had the famous horse, and he had the dog Bullet. You know, so for a young kid to see that, you know, it was pretty cool to see that on TV. So toys also, you know, play sets back in the day, Roy Rogers, Mark's play set. I don't remember if there was ever, I don't think there was a Gene Autry one, but there definitely was a Roy Rogers one, because I think I had pieces to that. I don't think I had the whole thing, but I had pieces to it. But there was a Zorro set made by Marx, which was really, really nice. So yeah, I mean, I've got so many movies and TV shows that I'm now kind of beaming back before my time. You know, and Lash LaRue, and like I said, Charles Starrett, and Alan Rocky Lane, Crash Corrigan, these guys that, you know, the movie might only be 35, 45 minutes long, you know, but it did get put out by one of these companies that got a hold of these films and started releasing them. So, you know, I've amassed a collection of those. And what's kind of funny about watching those is that you'll see like maybe a stagecoach riding through the plains or something like that, and you'll see it, and you might end up seeing that same stagecoach in another show.
Sure.
You know, the same studio, they use the same footage again, you know, or you might see the same scene in one particular show where it's coming at you. It's coming at you at one camera angle, but it's coming at you again, and the other camera is only maybe 25 feet away from the original camera. So you'll see that same thing twice, basically, but you'll see it at different intervals of the chase. And but again, you know, a lot of those guys that were the secondary actors to the Rocky Lane and Charles Starrett and stuff like that, you see those reoccurring actors in every single show. Sometimes there might be a good guy, sometimes there might be a bad guy, you know, and you know, some of them were interesting characters.
So the guy that played alongside Roy Rogers is Gabby Hayes.
Yeah.
And I like watching Roy Rogers films. The fight scenes, remember, they're choreographed and they have to rehearse these.
Yeah.
But you can always see when there's a stunt guy stepping in for Gabby in one of the fight scenes, because the guy's hair is much darker. He's much taller. But you're going to enjoy those musicals. Gene Autry, always good musicals. Was it Bob Baker? Was it also a singing cowboy and the like? And finally, the future of westerns today. If you were to name some westerns that you've seen, say in the past 10 years, what would you give a thumbs up to?
That's pretty hard. Because there hasn't been too many of them out there.
What are your top three all time?
Well, you know, I really, you know, I kind of like those ones that James Garner did that were with Jack Elam. Oh God, I have to go in the other room and look at the posters, but I've got them in the other. Yeah, it was like a sheriff. I can't remember the name. God, that kind of caught me off guard with that.
Let me ask you this. I love Gunfight at OK Corral Westerns. Every single one I've ever seen.
That's pretty cool. And you know, I actually kind of like the Lone Ranger Disney movie, to be honest with you, just simply because it brought you back, and the film technology today is just so much different from back in the day. But you know, the hokiness of the train ride there was a little hokey, but you know, it was really cool to see that back on the big screen, a Western, you know. And but you know, like I said, I wasn't a John Wayne fan growing up, but I've become a John Wayne fan, you know, simply because of, you know, being a photographer. John Ford
Oh yeah.
is incredible. You know, it's incredible where they went to film these things and how they filmed them in the locations, the historical locations of the country. And it's just so picturesque to see this stuff. And, you know, you know, How the West Was Won, that was a famous movie. I remember seeing that with my uncle back in the day. I think we sat there twice and watched it twice in the same day because there was just so many unbelievable actors in that movie making appearances. But you know, it's sad that, you know, I had my believe it or not, I had my opportunity to be in a Western movie. That I had met a director at one of these film festivals, and he came over to my table and you know, saw my material that I was selling, as well as saw a couple of 16 by 20s I had of my sports pictures, and we got chatting about sports, and he was telling me that he was filming a movie, and he was going to get, he had Johnny Crawford in the movie, the rifleman's son, making a guest appearance in the movie, and Darby Hinton was going to be in the movie, who was the kid in Daniel Boone, the little blonde kid in Daniel Boone, Darby Hinton. He's a big guy now, looks like a middle linebacker, if you want to say that, and he was going to be in this movie. And, you know, jokingly, I think I had my Red Sox book there, and I signed my Red Sox book and gave it to this gentleman. And jokingly, as I walked away, I said, if you ever need somebody to shoot on Main Street, give me a call.
Oh.
And he laughed. And unbelievably, about 4 months later, he called me. And I'm filming a scene, and I think he was in North Carolina, going to film this scene in a jail, and asked me if I wanted to be an extra.
Ooh.
And it was during the hockey season. And it wasn't, you know, North Carolina doesn't have snow like we have up in Boston. So I looked at my calendar, and it fit. And I said, yeah. And he says, well, you know, you're going to be in a jail scene with a couple of other guys, and Darby's going to come in and look for, you know, some people. And the concept of the movie is they were actually filming a Western in the Western era. You know, it was when the filming started, you know, back in the day. And they wanted to use real outlaws to make this movie. And it was, it had a long name, and I can't remember what it is, but then it just came out on DVD, and it's called The Marshal. It's called The Marshal. And it was shown in small theaters, whatever, but it came out on DVD, and the name changed simply because I think the name might have been too long to put on a DVD package. So I was psyched. They told me what hotel to check into, and I was getting ready to go. And then all of a sudden I saw Darby Hinton do a Facebook post where he was like on this porch and sitting in like a lounge chair with his feet out. And he made a statement about 3 or 4 days of postponement in the filming because of the weather.
Oh.
And they were filming this particular scene where he was on location. I think it was in Virginia. And they were coming to North Carolina, or it might have been the other way around, North Carolina going to Virginia. And I said, okay, if there's a delay in filming that scene and then they're going up to this location to film this scene. So I got on the phone and I called the producer's director's number, and they told me that there was a delay in filming the scene that I was going to be in, and it was going to be carried into like the next week, and I was back shooting hockey.
Sure. Well, Babs, we've come to the conclusion of another episode, More to the Picture Than Meets the Eye. Steve Babineau. Great talking about all sorts of TV Westerns and Western films. Babs, thanks so much for talking about the Alaskans and the Dakotas.
Thank you. All the best.
Okay, we'll see you next episode.